Praying for you and the surgery you have. I had that done when I was about your age. No, I'm not going to use it. Yeah, I had it done, same reason, they wanted me to look better. I think it's really what it was. No, didn't help. Didn't help, no. I can tell you one thing, I understand they've made progress in the technology, the procedure. I hope they have. For your sake, I hope you've twice. But it worked for me. It helped. It just, yeah. Oh yes, Dorothy. Yes, maybe they haven't changed. Stephen's young though. Yeah, we're really helping him here, aren't we? Dorothy, I thought that wrapping was attached to my brain, and it was in the back of my brain, and I had no idea exactly what I thought. I thought my nose isn't that big, apparently, but I just yeah. Pray for Stephen. Now, having said all that, we've really helped Stephen tonight, how to edify Stephen, She says it didn't help her, I'm sad you went through all that for nothing. It did. It was a great help to me. Now, when I had my x-ray done, the doctor looked at me and said, "You broke your nose playing sports, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I knew exactly when I did it, when I was playing for Alpha Omega Delta at Pensacola, and when I was in college playing college soccer, and yeah, got one right in the face. That hurt. Still, that hurt. Little did I know that it was going to hurt even more a few years later when they had to fix it. So, all right, if you're watching online, we've had a wonderful time of prayer, as you can tell. And tonight we're going to be in Matthew chapter 5. We only got 30 minutes. Let me jump into this because I don't even know if I can get this done in 30 minutes. Last one I wrote about this length, it took me like 3 weeks because of y'all. But Sally passed the buck. Great leadership. But I put a note on Facebook tonight on our anybody see the Odd Family? I put a warning label on tonight, said PG-13. But I'm thankful that the Bible deals with real life issues and Jesus dealt with it, so we are too, and I don't run away from it. And so that being said, if you're a little squeamish, now's your chance to tune out, which most of you do anyway, so that's okay. So we are studying where Jesus is teaching the Sermon on the Mount, considered to be the greatest sermon maybe ever delivered. One of the genius things about it from theologians over time is that Jesus delivers this during his earthly ministry, and some of the information in there is clearly, it's predominantly tied to Old Testament law, because technically the Old Testament law was still in force, and yet there are certainly portions of this that look forward to the era of grace. And if you try to interpolate it exclusively from one venue or the other, it'll drive you crazy. Which is why some folks who develop a false theology just say the Gospels are not for us. I think it's crazy. I think what Jesus had to say is probably important. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But if you understand why Jesus preached this sermon, then you interpret what's contained therein much more accurately. And we understand Jesus is at the zenith of his popularity, and the Pharisees are really consolidating their opposition to him. And this is Jesus making a very public statement where he's challenging the Pharisees for how they were teaching the people how they could earn the righteousness of God. And it was almost exclusively an external thing. All the rules, all things you had to do. And Jesus, in this sermon, challenges what is considered to be righteousness, and instead he says, no, what the Pharisees are teaching you is not right, is not true righteousness, and this sermon is full of what does true righteousness really look like. Even in Jesus' day, if someone were to completely follow the law with their heart through faith, what would it produce? What kind of attitudes? How would they handle issues of life? And that's what this sermon's about, Jesus really confronting the Pharisees here. And understand we're at a point where Jesus is now very directly going to confront them, and he begins to use a series of illustrations in contrast to how the rabbis had been teaching the people. The first one we saw is where Jesus gives the clear command out of Exodus 20, thou shalt not kill. And Jesus said, the Pharisees are teaching you that you don't violate that law till you actually kill someone. And Jesus says, but I say unto you, if you have unjust anger on the inside, you've committed sin. You've violated the true righteousness of that law. Was more than just external. It began internally. Now, that is not to say that the consequences between you actually killing somebody and thinking about killing them, there can be different consequences, right? I don't conflate the two. But in terms of in front of a holy God, both of those things violate the holy standard of God. They both are. Now, tonight, as I said, it's a PG-13 or PG-14 topic, and it begins in Matthew chapter 5, and verse number 27. Jesus gets to his second example, where he says, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time," and he refers now to the Old Testament, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." There's the command. Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. So Jesus brings up the topic of adultery. Now, adultery, by its technical definition, is a sin committed by those inside of a marriage covenant. And the problem is, maybe you say, well, then I just won't get married. Does that relieve me of any of that type of responsibility? No, the Bible calls that fornication or uncleanness are words that the Bible uses, and ultimately, without getting too PG-13 or whatever, God created sex, and he gave the guidelines to a healthy sex life, and it's one man with one woman inside the commitment of marriage. I won't belabor this at the point, other than to simply say, it stuns me how many women will give it away for free. It is the one card that God gave you to keep men in line. Got no amens on that, okay? Amen. It's the one thing. Men don't, other than food. Men want food. That we like that, and that, other than that. And when it's done correctly, God set it up for the motivation to be equal for each to love the other. But in our society today, we want to teach sexual freedom, which I would say that's what describes the days of Noah. And when did Jesus say he'd probably come back? As it was in the days of Noah. And the one global thing, the one that the world united throws their fist towards God, is in this area. It really is. So if you're not married tonight, this is still really good information for you. And when it came to adultery, the Pharisees taught that this commandment was only broken when the act was committed. But Jesus is going to teach that's not the standard of true righteousness. He quotes from Exodus 20. He gives the commandment, which is valid, and then he goes on to expound on it. He makes a very high expectation. Jesus says the sin of adultery begins inside in the heart, and the root issue is lust. And I thought, okay, what does it mean to lust? And just even defining that, I looked that up for a little while. When you say, what does that mean? Anybody got any thoughts on that? No? Okay, I said, I'm thinking, but no hands if you're listening online. No one wants to talk about this. Okay, I'll talk. By its technical definition, it just means to have a strong, intense desire, especially sexually. But you can have lust over other things other than that, but that is its primary one. And Jesus says that the sin is committed inside the heart. Specifically says when a man who looks on a woman with lust has committed adultery in his heart. Now, just like the first example of thou shalt not kill, I want to delineate a little bit here. I was reading some commentaries, and apparently some people have come to the conclusion, well, if that's true, I might as well go ahead and commit adultery. If it's the same thing anyway, you might as well just do it, right? Isn't it amazing how people twist them? No. Just like thou shalt not kill, the consequences of the actual act and what goes on in your mind can be different, but never misunderstand that they're both in violation to the holiness of God. They're both sinful. And yet actually doing something carries more consequences. Now, Jesus says in verse 27, or in verse 28, but I say unto you, whosoever looketh on a woman. Now, that's an interesting, if I wanted to be, I'm sure there are somebody out there. If Joe was here with me when he and I went to some, in our high school days, went to some really tight-minded churches, I'm sure there probably was some people who came and said, if you look at a woman, you're guilty. Jesus saying you can never look at a woman. I want to be careful. I only look at men. I don't want to look at any woman. I don't want to look. I might be committing sin. Is that what he means by that? No. In the Greek tense, it's in the perfect active indicative. It means constantly or presently looking. And you bring in the context of what Jesus means here. He's talking about a sustained look for the purpose of sexual gratification. And that's committing adultery in the heart. Now, as Jesus is delivering this sermon to almost overwhelmingly a Jewish audience, would have been primarily who he's speaking to here, my guess is that every man and every Pharisee that was listening to Jesus when he made that claim knew they were guilty. Yeah, I got a little laughter from somebody tonight because somebody's ahead of me. And tonight, my guess is that every man here and every man listening to me online has guilty too. I know the women are going, what? I put in my notes, should we have an invitation now? I surrender all. Okay, Drew, we got a piano player here? What? No one looking around. Yes, every head bowed, every eye closed. Yes. All the women look up, and every man should be right down here. And if your man's not, I see that. That's right. I see him all over the universe out there, all around the world. It's interesting that when Jesus deals with this issue of adultery, remember in the scriptures when Jesus came upon the incident of somebody caught in the act of adultery, remember that? Who's dragged out in front of the Pharisees? The woman. Interesting here that Jesus doesn't begin by dealing with females. He says in verse 28, he's talking about men with her in his heart. Now, why does Jesus not address the women about this issue? Sounds like that's not a problem. I know that. Anybody else? Do you think there's a reason for that? Yeah, Bill. Oh, I can see that hand. I see that hand. I see. Thank you. Put it up high. So wait.
Culturally, they spoke to the men.
All right. All right. Culturally, they spoke to the men. Matter of fact, when I was preparing this, I was thinking about that, Bill. That if you go to the Middle East, especially Muslim countries, or if you go to Minnesota, you go to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. Anybody been to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota? I have been. You will find a lot of women walking around Mayo Clinic in full, what do they call it, sikas? Is that what they call them? Pastor Dana's not here. All you can see is the burqa. Is that what? All you can see is their eyes, And I thought, if anyone doesn't have a good moral compass, it's amazing to me that they cover their women up more, but nobody treats the women worse than them. Kind of amazing, isn't it? But that's, I don't want to get sorry, but you're right, Bill. I put down in my notes, when it comes to Jesus speaking about the beginning of the sin, which is in the heart, which begins by a man looking on a woman with lust. Now, because of the degeneration of our culture has gotten so wicked, but in nominative terms, who's involved in pornography, men or women? You know the answer. There is both. There is both. That's why I said in the degenerate. But in terms of billions of dollars, let me say that again, $billion of dollars, it's men. And why is that? Because men and women, this is going to be really radical tonight, really radical. Men and women are different. This might surprise some people out there. I'm a little encouraged with the election results last night that maybe there's more of us than I thought there were that can understand that men don't belong in women's locker rooms and playing sports against women. Just because you play and pretend that you're a woman, you need to seek professional help, and we want to love you. But get out of women's locker rooms. It's just different. Men and women are different. And it drives me crazy when all the brainiacs tell us, oh, it's all about the environment they're raised in. That's just nonsense. And if you're a parent and you've had boys and girls, it's not hard to know they're different. I was just talking with Garrett and Hunter and Peyton tonight, 3 brothers, talking about what goes on in the house when mom and dad are gone, what the boys do and what the girls do. I don't know what girls do. They read books and make phone calls and on the phone. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but boys, we get into fights, we throw things, we break things, and then we try to hide it before mom and dad come home. That's what we do. Boys are going to want to play cowboys. They want to have guns. Their Second Amendment is programmed into them by the Creator. Just is. I've told you the funny story. A friend of ours, many years ago, when our kids were little, and we had some of our very closest friends, and they both had, they were on their way to earn PhDs from Indiana University, and they're very smart. They're wonderful people. But the wife in particular was really, she didn't want her boys to be violent. She wanted to be godly men. I'm like, why isn't a godly man? Godly men should be a little violent sometimes, and under control, in the right places. And she would not allow them ever to play anything that was gun related. So whenever we had birthday parties, we could never buy the little boy anything gun related. And we just kept telling her, okay, but we honored her request. And I think you should. When you have friends that are parenting and they have some stand, you might think they're crazy, but you might be the one that's crazy. But in this case, a year or so goes by, and one day Jenny gets a phone call from this lady and says, all right, I give up. Jenny goes, hey, what's going on? She goes, yeah, I went in the other day, the boys in the other room, the boys are playing in their room. I told them to play in there together, and I left and they were playing with Legos. And she goes, yeah? She goes, well, I go back in there and I look around the corner and there they are. Each of them have made guns out of Legos and they're shooting each other. There was nobody else to blame. There was no other families there. It must have been the church nursery probably, but I'm like, yeah, that's boys. But we're just different. And it's unfortunate that even in my study in the church in America today, and I use that term church very lightly, but there are actually churches that approve of the use of pornography because the thinking is it's better than committing the act. I don't even know how to respond to that, how wrong that is. Now, I don't want to get too deep on this. Again, it's PG-13 or 14. I don't want to go the rating any lower, but as somebody who's worked with men that have been addicted to pornography and that it's been destructive in marriages, I can tell you that pornography robs genuine satisfaction of sex that God designed for marriage. It dehumanizes the wife, forces her to compete with fake, airbrushed women. Pornography will demand more and more until men who are otherwise good men get involved and addicted to evil. And I wish sometimes I could unhear sessions and folks that you called to help in the ministry. But you end up with a man in front of you that begins to confess, I'm having problems with child pornography. And you say, how does that ever happen? That's the sickest thing ever. I can tell you, every single time. It started with soft porn, led to harder porn, led to violent porn, led to wicked porn, led to innocent porn, quote unquote. No one starts on that road thinking they're going to end up in that spot, and I'm not saying every single man necessarily does. I heard one pastor say, and I think he's right, in the church, pornography is not a men's issue, it is the men's issue. And Jesus is dealing with that. When a man looks. Now, tonight's Bible study, I entitled How to Overcome Adultery, and I don't know if we'll get done or not, but I want to look at how Jesus, how he goes on to kind of give to me the answers of how should we deal with this. Look in your text at verse 29 and 30. Jesus says, and if thy right eye, what you're looking with, offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it off, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not thy whole body should be cast into hell. And so I think Jesus gives a method with dealing with sin. I thought to myself in these two verses, I have two wonderful sermon titles: pluck it and cast it, or cut it and cast it. That's what Jesus says to do. Now that's some pretty serious, advice there. He's saying, if your hand or your eye offend thee, cut it off. Serious action. Now, some people, will say that Jesus is teaching about mutilation here. Now, my question is, if you have an eye that offends you and you pluck it out, does that stop you from committing the sin that Jesus is talking about? Why? Because you still got one left. Way to go, Rob. One smart man. You still got one left, and you can still commit that sin. And even if you took both eyes out, this is still functioning. If your hand, and people say, why did he go from the eye to the hand? Well, because it's what a man sees and what a man touches. Without being too graphic, I think if you're over the age of whatever here, you understand. And if you cut one off, you still have another one. I don't think his point is to mutilate the body per se. I think his point is to do whatever is necessary to stop this sin. He talks about the eye. And certainly, the Bible talks a lot about the eye. Whatever, in any area that we fix our eye upon, even when Eve, wasn't it? What did she do? When she saw the fruit, that it looked good. So it started with the women. I got to get a little in there, little for the women here tonight, Shakespeare said, the eye is the window to the soul. You ever heard that saying? Jesus is going to talk about this again in Matthew chapter 6, and I'm sure we'll look at it when we get there, but if you want to try a page over in your Bible, Matthew chapter 6, verse 22, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thy eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? Basically, Jesus said, with your eye, are you seeing the light, or are you looking for the darkness? And whatever you set your eye upon fills you. This is why in the things that we look at, the things we let into our ear, the five senses that we have, you got to be really careful. Some people develop things they see in their mind because of the words they put into their ears. Which is why, and I'll just keep saying it, I don't understand how Christians can justify at all listening to 90-some% of secular music today. Especially the Billboard top whatever. It's filth. And, I can't hear the words. Well, that might be problem number one. The eye. Now, Dr. Fruchtenbaum, in his unabridged version of Life of Messiah, gives several rabbinic writings about what Jesus is talking about here, this topic of when a man looks on a woman. And Dr. Fruchtenbaum compiled a bunch of them. Honestly, I didn't even want to read them publicly because I'd probably turn red. They're fairly graphic. Honest, but graphic. But I will give you one of them. One of the rabbis wrote, unchaste imagination or impure thoughts is more injurious than the sin itself. That's pretty good. The wicked thought oftentimes can carry with it more consequences in some perspective than even the act itself. And you say, I don't know, because the battle's here in our mind, isn't it? That's a strong statement. You have the eye, and then you have the hands. When I was a kid in our youth group, whenever we would be traveling on a away trip, when I was playing sports, whatever, we'd have the whole basic high school in a bus, 60 kids in a bus going to wherever, and we'd go play somewhere, and then we were driving back, and it was late at night, and every now and then our youth pastor would just turn all the lights on in the bus, and do what he would say is hand check. I wish Joe would be, he knows what I'm talking about. He's been in some. Anybody else? Matt, did your dad ever do that for you? No? Okay, well, you Christian school kids, that's what happened to us in our days. They turn like, what? I have hand check because I can't see. You're blinded me. But what we do with our hands, the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 7:1, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Now again, some legalists want to say, you should never touch another woman. The Greek word there is haptomai, and its root word literally means to adhere. It is not good for a man to adhere physically himself to another woman. I'm not talking about an appropriate greeting, a handshake, if you know someone well enough and you give them an appropriate hug. He's not talking about that. Now, if you have big issues, maybe that's something you want to put your own limitation on, but I don't think that's what Jesus has in mind. He's talking about the sin of adultery and beginning in the heart. Now, in my last 10 minutes, which I don't know how we're going to get this done, depends how long you'll talk, because I started, in light of this, writing down how can we overcome adultery. When I say adultery, even considering what Jesus' expectation is here. Not just the very act, but how do we overcome the sin in the heart, which I guess is mainly directed to men. And I came up with 5 things. Maybe you have some more, but I want to talk about these a little bit. Number 1, I put in my notes, how do you do it? You discipline the eye and the hands. You discipline the eye and the hands. And every man in here knows what I'm talking about. Now, maybe you ladies, maybe there's things you lust after, maybe it's a new ring, maybe it's, I don't know what it is, but disciplining where you look at. And we know when it's wrong, and we have that moment to make that choice. And if you start training yourself to indulge in that, you got to discipline. Now, I put in my notes, and I'm going to ask a question first and maybe only tonight. I only want ladies answering the question I'm about to ask, all right? This is a ladies-only question because when it comes to men and what we see and that we have this weakness, my question to the ladies here tonight is, does a woman bear any responsibility for causing a man to sin? Oh man, if you didn't hear that online, I didn't even get my head up, and I'm hearing yes, almost unanimously. Yes. Oh, okay. I take it there's no votes. How about this for an election? It's we carry the motion. I'm curious. What should? Yeah, Mel. Okay. All right. Mel says the women have a responsibility of not dressing provocatively. I think the right word, I think you use the word modesty. Does that mean, in some of the Middle Eastern cultures, if an American woman even dressed modestly shows up over there, but they're not meet Islamic law, they're basically saying, I want to be raped. Does that mean that if a woman does dress provocatively, see any mall or any beach in America today, does that mean that a woman who is sexually attacked or whatever, it's her fault? Oh, now I got to know for that too. Okay, now ladies, can you have it both ways? Yes, I can. That's because I'm a woman. I can have it both ways. I 100% agree with that. I'm not going to argue with that. I think you can have it both ways. Now, let me expand on that. Where is that line? Anybody? I'm just curious. You ladies, what do you... Okay. All right. Well, Karen, voice of wisdom there. There's a lot of our women today, girls that were raised with none of these, never given that information. Is that kind of what you're saying, Karen? Let me ask you this as a follow-up. Where should a woman be getting that information? There we go. I heard a bunch of moms, not moms. Dads. Now, I want to be really careful here because I remember when I was in high school, our church, when we would ever go on youth groups, sometimes we went snow skiing. I know some down here, you don't know what that is. We get on these big mountains and they're full of snow, and we put these slippery things on our feet, go down really fast. Brock Miller was a really good skier, I understand, in his day, but they made the girls wear culottes because it was modest. Yeah, I know, yeah. My sister was not happy about that. Still to this day is not happy about that. I don't want to get into the legalism. But it stuns me. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I've been hated on for it before, and I'll be hated on for it again. If you start letting your girls dress with no clothes on publicly when they're little, what do you think they're going to do when they get older? And I understand, usually the one that I have the problem with is the mom. Oh, it's no big deal. She's just out there doing this, or this. Ultimately, that's the thing between you and God. You're the parents, not me. All right? I'm not, no judgment here. It's very hard. Both of the girls were much harder on me and Jennifer than raising the boys. You know, the boys, I just kicked them in the backside. But I'll be in hell before I let my daughter leave the house dressed like a slut. Sorry, I don't want to be too independent Baptist, but it's the truth. And they're going to not like it when they're teenagers. They're probably going to push back against you. But how about being man enough to see a little farther down the road than they see? I remember one of my favorite things, I think I saw it on TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but it came up on Facebook. All right, there you go. I'm not a big TikTok fan, but where this girl wanted to go out and she had these short shorts on that were really fitting. Do you remember, Matt? It's a Matt and Michelle. It's a Matt video for sure. I could see you. You would have done this 100%. You know what I'm talking about. And so the girl says, and he says, I'm going to go out like this. I want to go out. And she's dressed in all these short shorts, and the dad's going on. And he goes, okay, but I'm going to take you. And he leaves and goes, and he comes back wearing these tight short pants. I mean, these short shorts. It was really. You do it, and he goes, let's go. And she's going, no. Now that's a smart dad. You get up there, you know, you say, oh, you're going to provoke him to rebel. Maybe. But my job is to do what I know is right. And I understand there are some men out there that no matter how a woman dresses, their mind is wicked and defiled. But I'm not going to play the part of sending my girl out there knowing how men think. And I'm going to tell you the full truth. Most of the men in here, I think most, maybe I'd say all, I know most of the guys in here, are good guys. There's good men in here tonight. But I can promise you, that doesn't mean we don't battle with these things. We do. And if good guys have issues with that are trying to discipline themselves, and you send your teenage girl out with a bunch of hormone-driven teenage boys, I'm just telling you, wake up and realize how men think. Because whatever we as human beings focus on and look on, if we look on it long enough, almost always turns into something that we do. And as a pastor, so many times, at both churches, here and in our first ministry, we had a pretty good-sized Christian school. Ultimately, it's how Tazza came into our life. Because she had nobody in her life that was willing to fight for her. And you know, when I first did it, she hated us for it. She hated me for it. Or I don't know if she hated me. Taz, did you hate me? You didn't like me very much when I would tell her, no. But underneath it all, she just wanted somebody that cared enough to say, hey, you're valuable. And if some man just likes you because you just please him physically, what a loser he is. And as a dad, come on, guys, be strong. Now, let me give the other side of the coin. And I guess I share, and I have to stop. We'll pick this up next week because I want to discuss this a little bit more, and then we get to go right in from this into divorce. Another easy topic. It's just easy here. But there was a season in my life where the church defined what morality and what dress code looked like. Instead of challenging the men, you need to discipline yourself. You know what, guys? I hate to break it to you. When you go out there, there's billboards today. You're going to be confronted with this, so you better have a plan in place and be disciplining yourself. But a lot of what men want to do, especially guys in my position, is say, well, I'll show you that the dress needs to be here, or always a dress, whatever the thing is, because otherwise it causes offense. No. You need to, there's going to be some variance inside the body of Christ, and that's okay. It really is. But I remember when I first got saved, the church we grew up in, where I was really discipled in, we had a really great Awana club. The founders of Awana used to come attend our club to watch. We were, in the early years of Awana, I was privileged to be part of a church the size of ours that just ran a vibrant. And sometimes we'd do campouts, and one of the families that always hosted us, they were farmers, and they had a lot of land. We always played capture the flag out in the farmland. Some of it was wooded. There were cow pies all over. You ain't played, capture the flag till you've been flung down and whoop, that's warm. That's a little warmer than it ought to be, But they had a swimming pool. And one of the activities was always swimming. And now Awana went through 6th grade, I think. And they went right from the early days, it went in through 6th grade. And then eventually they went to 7th, 8th. And we had swimming things all the time. And I've got to tell you, I grew up like that, and I never really thought, even as I grew into, that late elementary, early junior high years where I was waking up and going, oh, girls. Didn't think much about it. Then we went to the more conservative independent, and they started preaching against mixed swimming. Now, if you have that conviction, if you have a pool, I'm 100% support you. But I remember thinking to myself as an 8th or 9th grade young man, thinking, I had never thought of that. Really? You call me naive or whatever, but it was just part of the culture. I didn't really think that way until I went to a place where they told me this was so bad, and you're thinking this, and you're thinking this. And I said, well, I wasn't thinking that, but I am now. Where Paul says, if it wasn't for the law, I wouldn't have known sin. In my life, that was really true. I don't think, I really didn't have that until they were on my case about it. And then I remember when I became a pastor, I had to deal with this in Central Florida. You know how many swimming pools there are in Central Florida? And I had to deal with that a lot. And then when we came here, one of our families, they were a big stumbling block. They had a lake house on Lake Martin, and who wants to go swim in Lake Martin? That was fun, Brock. Wasn't it fun? Brock and Lori for many years owned a house on Lake Martin, and we would do church activities, and we'd swim in the lake. And I remember I met with some of the guys, said, we got it. I don't want to be women wearing dresses trying to swim, being a bunch of idiots. And yet at the same time, I knew even at that time, somebody in particular, I'm not obviously going to name any names, they're not here any longer, but they were struggling in this area, and as a pastor, I don't want to put my people in front of a place where I'm causing them to sin with no boundaries. So I remember we told everybody, the women, everybody could wear swimsuits, and the women, if they with a swimsuit, needed to wear like shorts, like athletic shorts, not shorts down to their knee. They didn't have to be that long, but they wore shorts, and then they wore a t-shirt over it. And then we said, you know what, guys? If the women have to swim in t-shirts, so do we. Now, it could be a cutoff. It could be a wife beater. Matt always wanted to wear a wife beater. I don't know why that was. Why do you like wife beaters so much? The big muscles? No, I don't think so. But we went out there, and you know what? It was not a problem. It was not a problem. Now, I had one family that gave me a lot of grief. They're not here either, surprise, surprise, any longer. But they came off and said, well, if I can't wear just my bikini, I'm not coming. And Jenny and I looked, and I said, I guess you're not coming. Remember I told you that guilt thing doesn't work good on me? It doesn't work good on me. I said, oh, okay. Stinks to be you. Because the rest of us, Had a great time, except for Karen Bell, who decided that she thought even in those days she could be on that wakeboard thing, or the what is that thing you pulled behind the boat, the tube, the inner tube. Karen was acting younger than her age. It was you and Melody both, wasn't it? And you let Brock drive, and trust me, this man knows how to make you pay a heavy price. He got me one time, and I said, never again.
Pastor, he tried, I guess he thought I needed to be free of that.
Yeah, yes. There's a picture somewhere with Karen about this far off the top of the inner tube, going, oh! Melody looking at her going, I'm scared too. And then Karen lost her glasses in the bottom of Lake Martin, and the rest of us spent hours diving down to the bottom of Lake Martin trying to find the glasses because of Brock. All I'm saying is there's a balance in this thing. There really is. And you can enjoy life and engage in things. I would just tell you, man, don't cause your brother to stumble. And men, there is accountability with us too. So we'll pick it up. I got 4 more things I want to share about this, but we're out of time. We're 5 minutes over. But I hope you've enjoyed this tonight. I'm sorry. I know I'm a little cutting edge. I'm just really passionate about it. I am so thankful for the teams that we have that watch over our ministry here, because I recognize that inside of every human being in this room tonight is enough sin to destroy a lot. And yet the worst thing, I don't want anything ever to happen to any of those kids. Any of them. But Jenny would tell you, them little girls in particular, something about us as men that say, protect, protect, protect. Now, if they're little boys, the moms are going, protect, protect, and the dads are going, get out there. I don't care if you're 2, you can stand up for yourself. I remember, I'll stop. I remember a couple months ago, my son, who's 30, came into our bedroom one night. We were going for bed, and he came up and he gave me a hug. It's nice when your kids love you, He said, I love you, Pops. I said, thanks, son, I love you too. And he looked at me and he said, if somebody breaks in the house and they're going to shoot you or Mom, I'm taking the bullet for Mom, not for you. Well, thank you, son. I appreciate that. He started walking away. I said, son? He goes, yeah, Dad. I said, I love you, son. And I said, but your sister? If someone breaks in the house, I'm going to take a bullet for her before I do one for you. He looked at me and he came back over and he put his fist pump out and he goes, deal. And we both walked away happy. All right, I'm going to close in prayer. Thank you for being here tonight. Let's close and we'll be dismissed. And pray for our ladies who will be at the retreat this weekend. So men, this weekend's Veterans Day. So special service this Sunday celebrating our veterans. So let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for the time tonight. Lord, I'm thankful that in your word that you did not shy away from the real issues of life. And all these thousands of years later, really, men are still men, women are still women. We still battle with these same sins. Help us, the men that are in here, the men that are listening under the sound of my voice, help us to discipline our eyes. Lord, forgive us when we fail in this area, but God, please keep us from being caught in the bondage of pornography. Lord, I pray for the women that are here that it's a difficult balance. And for the parents here that are leading boys and girls, it's hard today. Give them discernment and give moms and dad a unity of purpose together as we lead our children. Protect our ministry, and God, I pray that you'd bless us now as we go our separate ways. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for being here tonight. See you later. Over and out.